In a foreign land, an orphan girl gazes at a world of power just out of reach.
Esther weighs her life against her people, torn between silence and brave action.
Imagine rising from orphan to queen, risking everything to save your people all while the world's mightiest empire waits on your next move. Esther's courage didn't just change history. It proves that one hidden life can flip the fate of a nation. Are you ready for the epic true story behind Purim? Long ago, during the reign of King Xerxes, a ruler whose power stretched from India to Ethiopia, the Persian Empire was the center of the world. From his grand throne in Susa, King Xerxes commanded absolute authority over 127 provinces. And to showcase his wealth and influence, he hosted an extravagant 6-month feast. Nobles, princes, and military commanders from across the lands gathered in the palace, where golden goblets clinked and royal wine flowed endlessly. When the lavish festival ended, Xerxes opened the palace gates to everyone in Susa, inviting them to a 7-day celebration in the palace gardens, complete with limitless drinks and fine food. Meanwhile, Queen Vashti held her own banquet inside the palace, honoring the women of the court. On the 7th day of the festivities, King Xerxes, filled with pride and wine, demanded that Queen Vashti appear before his guests wearing her royal crown so they could admire her beauty. Vashti refused, unwilling to parade herself before a crowd of drunken men. Her bold defiance shocked the court and wounded the king's pride. Advisors warned Xerxes that Vashti's actions could inspire other women to disregard their husbands, threatening the order of every household in Persia. Spurred by counsel, the king removed Vashti from her throne and sent a decree throughout the empire that every man should rule his own household. Vashti was gone, but behind the political drama, God's hidden plan was just beginning. Time passed, and as Xerxes' anger faded, he reminisced about Vashti's beauty and bravery. Yet her absence lingered, and the law that banished her could not be undone. Sensing the king's melancholy, his advisors proposed a solution: gather the most beautiful young women from every province, and let the king choose a new queen after their beauty treatments. Xerxes agreed, and messengers searched all 127 provinces, bringing the finest young women to the palace. Among them was Esther, known by her Hebrew name Hadassah, a Jewish orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai, who taught her to honor God and keep her identity secret in a foreign land. Esther was placed under Hegai, the keeper of the women, and quickly stood out not because she demanded special treatment, but because she displayed humility and grace. Everyone, especially Hegai, was drawn to her gentle spirit. For 12 months, Esther, like all the other women, prepared for her moment before the king. When the time came, she entered Xerxes' presence with quiet poise and confidence. The king was captivated. More than any other, he favored Esther, placing the crown on her head and naming her queen in place of Vashti. Xerxes threw a royal banquet in Esther's honor, proclaimed a holiday, and distributed gifts throughout the empire. Yet no one knew Esther's true heritage. God's hand had positioned her in the palace not to be served, but to stand in defense of her people. Esther continued to live quietly in the royal household, following Mordecai's wise counsel just as she had under his care as a child. While Esther settled into her new life, Mordecai kept watch at the king's gate, where city business took place and palace officials mingled. Though he held no noble rank, God's purpose had placed him there. One day, Mordecai overheard a plot by the palace eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, who were conspiring to assassinate King Xerxes. Mordecai moved quickly, alerting Queen Esther, who relayed the warning to the king and disclosed Mordecai as the source. An investigation confirmed the plot, and the traitors were executed. Mordecai's role was quietly recorded in the Royal Book of Chronicles, but no honor or reward was given. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman the Agagite, elevating him to the highest rank among the officials. Xerxes commanded that all bow to Haman, but Mordecai refused. His faith would not allow him to honor a man above God. Haman noticed the daily defiance and grew consumed with hatred. Discovering Mordecai's Jewish heritage, Haman resolved not just to punish Mordecai, but to eradicate all Jews from the empire. He cast lots called Purim to choose the day for their destruction, then approached Xerxes, describing the Jews as a rebellious people who did not follow Persian laws. Persuaded, the king handed Haman his signet ring, authorizing a decree for the massacre of all Jews on the 13th day of the 12th month. The news spread quickly, and terror filled Jewish homes throughout the empire. Susa was thrown into confusion, and mourning erupted among Esther's people. On hearing that Mordecai was in mourning, Esther sent a messenger to understand the reason. Mordecai urged her to go before the king and plead for the lives of her people. Esther hesitated, knowing that approaching Xerxes without a summons could mean death unless he extended the golden scepter. She revealed to Mordecai that she hadn't been called for 30 days. Mordecai's response was unwavering. Do not think that because you are in the palace, you alone will escape. If you remain silent, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther's fear gave way to faith. She replied, Go, gather all the Jews in Susa, and fast for me 3 days. I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. After 3 days of fasting, Esther donned her royal robes and approached the inner court of the palace. Xerxes saw her standing and unexpectedly extended the golden scepter. Esther touched its tip, hope and relief flooding her heart. The king welcomed her warmly and asked, What is your request, Queen Esther? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. At the banquet, Esther said little, waiting for the right moment. Before the meal ended, she invited them to return the following day for another banquet, promising to reveal her petition then. The curiosity of both the king and Haman was piqued. That night, Xerxes couldn't sleep. He ordered his servants to read the royal chronicles and discovered Mordecai's act of loyalty, how he had exposed the assassination plot and saved the king's life. Shocked that Mordecai had received no reward, Xerxes resolved to honor him. At that very moment, Haman arrived, intending to ask permission to hang Mordecai. Instead, Xerxes summoned his advice. What should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Haman, believing the king meant him, suggested royal robes, the king's own horse, and a crown, all displayed in a parade. Xerxes commanded, Go at once. Do as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew. Haman, mortified, reluctantly led Mordecai through the streets, proclaiming his honor for all to see. Devastated, Haman returned home and confided in his wife and friends, who warned him that if Mordecai was of Jewish origin, his downfall was inevitable. Haman's hatred only grew darker. The next day, at Esther's second banquet, the king again asked her to reveal her true request. With courage, Esther declared, Grant me my life, this is my petition, and spare my people, this is my request. For we have been sold and condemned to destruction, death, and annihilation. Xerxes demanded, Who is he, and where is the man who would dare do such a thing? Esther pointed at Haman. The adversary and enemy is this wicked man. The king was enraged and left to collect himself. Haman, desperate, collapsed before Esther to beg for mercy. When Xerxes returned and found Haman pleading at Esther's couch, he accused him of assault. Guards seized Haman and hanged him on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. Haman was gone, but his deadly decree remained. A royal edict sealed by the king could not be revoked, not even by Xerxes himself. The date for the annihilation of the Jews still loomed ahead. Esther approached Xerxes once more, pleading for her people. Moved, Xerxes allowed Mordecai to write a new decree in the king's name. Jews across every city could now assemble, defend themselves, and take the property of any enemies. This decree was sent quickly across all 127 provinces, in every language. Hope was restored, and where there had once been mourning, now there was gladness and celebration. On the appointed day, the Jews, united and emboldened by royal protection, rose to defend themselves and defeated their enemies. In Susa, 800 attackers fell, including Haman's 10 sons, who were hanged at Esther's request. Across the empire, 75,000 adversaries were struck down, but the Jews took no plunder, fighting only for survival and justice. When the battle ended, relief and joy swept through the people, and what began as terror became an occasion for feasting. To commemorate their deliverance, the Jewish people established the festival of Purim, named after the lots Haman had cast for their destruction, a symbol now transformed into celebration and hope. Every year on the 14th and 15th days of Adar, Jews would feast, rejoice, share gifts, and give generously to the poor. The day meant for disaster became a day of life. Mourning turned to joy, grief became celebration. Mordecai was honored throughout Persia, clothed in royal blue and white, second only to King Xerxes. Yet it was not Mordecai's power, but his heart for justice, truth, and peace that made him great. Though throughout Esther's story God's name is never mentioned, his presence is felt in every twist, every risk, every rescue. What was intended for destruction became salvation. Esther's story reminds us, even when God seems silent, he is never absent. Even when the odds are against us, he is already at work. And perhaps, like Esther, you too are where you are for such a time as this, not by accident, not unseen, but chosen, positioned, and called. Even in silence, purpose speaks. Esther's legacy shows you might be where you are for such a time as this. Follow for more stories of courage and destiny.